Hey sports fans, this is Lily King. Make sure you tune into Indiana Sports Beat with Jim Coyle.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
See us foaming like a bottle of beer. The wave is coming, but I ain't got no fear. I'm waxing down to that Agoria pass.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat. Jim Coyle with you here as always, and we're grateful to be joined by our good friend Scott Agness from The Athletic. Joins us now. Scott, how are you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on again.
As always, it's a pleasure, man. It's been a slow week, but all of a sudden it seems like things are just kind of busting loose today, man.
Yeah, no question. There's various things going on, whether you're talking nationally and teams trying to wrap up actual games or on the coaching search with the Lakers or just kind of every other team ramping up. In a week from now, they'll be at the Combine in Chicago. So there's kind of a lot going on at this point in terms of NBA.
Yeah, it looks like the Lakers took a page out of the playbook from UCLA's coaching start as they find themselves in a weird situation. We talked a little bit before, but they're trying to hire a coach without having a president in place. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's very much a backward situation. And like I've been thinking here, first of all, if you're a coach, number one, you're going to want your guaranteed money beyond 3 years, like Ty Lue was reportedly offered, but you're also going to want your boss in place. And so it's a situation where you've had several quality candidates in Monty Williams and now Ty Lue most recently turn down the job. And if you're the Lakers, this is further and black mark on your franchise where they should be the lead of the group. They get the most interest nationally and worldwide, and yet they're having hot coaches that are without head coaching jobs turn them down.
Yeah, it's kind of like a college coach being hired by one athletic director, and then there being a different athletic director. Everybody always wants their own people in there, and you kind of feel uneasy when you don't have the guy that brought you in over you.
Yeah, and that works both sides, right? You want to not only work for a guy that you have a good relationship with and trust you to do your job, but also have the ability to hire your assistants. And that seems to be also an area, Jim, where the Lakers management stepped in and was like, you know what, we'd kind of like to push these 2-3 guys on you in all that situation. And the head coach, you're around these guys. Anyone with a team, you're around these guys more than anyone, your own family even. So you don't want to go to battle with guys that necessarily aren't your guys or maybe you have no chemistry with. You want to build guys around you that not only help you, but maybe counter where your weak points are. Or if you're an offensive-minded coach, you want that defensive-minded coach. So, yeah, it certainly works both ways, so I can understand why any coach would come with it from that viewpoint.
Lakers are obviously able to do this right now because they're not in the current NBA playoffs, and the playoffs are rolling. And the Indy guys are having a good time at it. Eric Gordon with a huge night a couple games ago with 30 points. But everybody's having a good playoff run for the Indy guys.
Yeah, and basically every series ongoing right now, you got somebody playing from Indy and doing very well. The lone exception, I would say right now, has been Gordon Hayward, who in the second round just hasn't really found a rhythm or found a groove. But that Celtics team's really been dysfunctional all season long, and this series has been no exception. But, yeah, you mentioned Eric Gordon with the Rockets, George Hill with the Bucks, and even Gary Harris with the Denver Nuggets as well.
And if Kyrie Irving leaves the Celtics after a lot of people have thought that, of course the talk is going to come up with, is Brad Stevens going to stay? And Indiana people are going to go crazy. Go hire Brad Stevens, because so many people want him. But I don't see him ever leaving the NBA. Well, at least not for a long time.
It's hard to know at this point. I know early on, one of the challenges for him was adapting to the change in schedule. And what I mean by that, Jim, is there's no real practice time after you get a month or two into the season. And then also you miss the relationship part of it. You recruit a guy for 2 or 3 years, and assuming he plays for you, he's there with you like they were at Butler, most guys for 3 and 4 years. So that's like a 6-7 year process. And that you're around guys. And I forget what the exact number is, but I think it was Brad's first year in charge of the Celtics. They had something like 35 different players on their roster go through it, because that was a point where they obviously weren't winning and they were cycling through players and making trades for the possibility to really boost the roster. And so I think those aspects are difficult. Now, that said, working for the Celtics is one of the storied franchises. You're not having to worry about recruiting and making and taking phone calls at 9 and 10 p.m. about a recruit that's probably going to turn you down in the next week. And you're, of course, coaching some of the best in the world. But coaching is not the number one thing in NBA. In college, coaches run programs. In the NBA, it's a players' league.
And talking about the NBA, of course, the draft is coming up soon. A lot of talk about Romeo Langford. Earlier in the year, he was a top 5, 6 pick projected. And, of course, he has steadily fallen since the season at Indiana. He did not have a great season. Indiana did not have a great season. But he's now fallen out of the top 20 for some of the draft projections. And what that does is that now the Pacers are sitting there at 18 right now, unless they trade, but there's that possibility. We've seen this before with Damon Bailey. Do they go for the big PR hit, or is this a good fit for the Pacers? You follow them as much as anybody, Scott. What do you think about adding Romeo Langford to this mix with a Victor Oladipo?
Well, for one, there's still several things that still have to be determined if you really want to look at those mock drafts, and one of those is the exact teams and with their placement. So we'll have the draft lottery this upcoming Tuesday. That's when the lottery team, spots 1 through 14, will figure out where exactly they're picking, right? And so that obviously changes where a guy might be slotted to and has a good fit, like you mentioned. But to me, it seems like maybe Romeo, he just really didn't have that type of a freshman season that jumps out at you, even though he was one of the top scoring freshmen in the country. And I really do wonder, Jim, how much that injury to his thumb, I think it was, really impacted his shooting too, because that's probably the biggest knock on him at this point, as just like a 19-year-old, is can he shoot and do so from the three-point line on a consistent basis? Because we know he can attack, he has great finishing skills and those sorts of things. Now, in terms of the Pacers, they have a lot of various positions and spots they need to fill. Victor's their only starter, along with Miles Turner, that will all likelihood be back on the roster next season that we expect. But Romeo being that lengthy guy in terms of wingspan and his ability to attack the rim and finish, that's intriguing. However, I think what they're also looking for would be maybe something a little more potential for now, a little more potential to shoot and create is really two of the things that the Pacers and Kevin Pritchard are looking for. And that said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Pacers either trade up or trade out of this spot and do something in terms of making a trade or some kind of splash if they can find another deal and another team to make it work, because Kevin Pritchard's really wanting to upgrade this roster. And they have a great flexibility with the amount of money that they can spend or contracts that they could take on, which could allow them to also pick up a prize piece in exchange.
Talking with our friend of the show, Scott Agness from The Athletic. And Romeo has dropped like 15 spots, and that's just in the projections, of course. But every time I see something, it refers to his offhand ball handling and, of course, the shooting. But I don't see a lot of the NBA guys mentioning the injury, and I'm not sure that they're really buying into that, with good reason probably. But I think with him falling like he did, which I know it's no way that it would ever happen, but it probably would have been a good idea for him to spend a second year in college. But he's going to be a first-round draft pick, so that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, so here's the argument, Jim, right? Of course he's not ready. Most of these guys are not ready or even close to what they could be, say, 2-3 years from now. Take, for example, the Pacers. Miles Turner would just now be entering his name into the draft if he stayed at Texas for 4 years. And think about the type of career he's already had, but he still has plenty more room for growth as well. And so you consider maybe Zion's the only true guy that had no business for sure even going to college. He's ready to make an impact, I think, starting next year. Romeo, to me, Jim, reminds me a lot of Noah Vonleh, in that obviously he's a top draft pick. He's a lottery guy. He has so much potential in the league, and that's why you got to, if you're the player, you got to go, because you can't risk being a likely a guaranteed first-round pick and a real likely lottery pick for the chance to go back to school. Maybe you have a season-ending injury or something happens. You got to get it while you can. And so I totally understand Romeo's decision, although we should note he technically could still remove his name from consideration.
Yeah, I'll see that when lightning flies out of my fingertips, but I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon.
I'm just making it clear that it still could be done because IU, for example, did have 3 other players put their name in consideration for the draft, but the other 3, they did not get invited to the Combine among the 66 other players.
Well, now we could probably take a bet on whether or not Romeo stays in the draft because the big news of the day, Governor Holcomb signs the sports gambling bill into law, and that's a big deal. Indiana becomes one of the first states in the Midwest and only one of 10 in the country with legalized sports gambling. I mean, to me, that's pretty amazing because you look at some of the other big-ticket items in the country like marijuana. I think the Kremlin will have marijuana legally before Indiana does. And so for them to have sports gambling is pretty a big thing, I think, for the state.
Yeah, I'm with you on several fronts there. First being how quickly Indiana acted on initiating and allowing for this to take place here soon, along with several other things gambling related, like something over in Terre Haute casino. But yeah, this has great potential. And I come from the belief that you're either a real gambler or you're not. I don't see this as X person never really gambles. They start because it's now legal and become addicted. There might be a few individuals, but I don't see that really taking place. And I think that for a lot of people, that was the downside that came with it. So this has real opportunity. Obviously, the revenue for the state, it allows them to make money off some things those dedicated gamblers are doing anyway. And it also is just an interesting thing to watch, especially with these sports teams as they continue to look for revenue themselves and the in-game things. How much fun could it be, Jim, for 4.7 seconds left, Pacers are down by 1. Could you bet, do the Pacers win? Who takes the last shot? Is it a turnover? I mean, those are little things that are interesting on top of just the general things. You bet the line, you try to get parlays and various things like that.
Yeah, the old famous prop bets from the Super Bowl, betting on the coin toss and this, that, and the other thing. It's crazy. Because now everything can be done from your phone. That's what makes it so nuts. It's just like, bam, everything's right at your fingertips.
That's the good thing and the bad thing, right? Because the accessibility, the negative side of that is you can easily get caught up in 5, 10, 15 bets for a game. I had a friend that does some offshore gambling, and we were out one night, and he was tracking like 7 different bets for just one game. For me, it's kind of a headache. I have no idea how people have the type of energy and emotion to dedicate to that. And it really sways your emotion. But also, we should mention, it'll be interesting to see how this positively or negatively impacts TV ratings a little bit, because if more and more people have something on the line, I think we're going to see live sports TV ratings go up just a tick yet again, as all the rest of television seems to be in a decline because it's very much an on-demand world.
It makes complete sense, Scott. But another thing that really comes to mind that really makes the fact that Indiana is one of these states that has done this is Indiana is home to so many amateur sports headquarters. The NCAA, I think the AAU, there's so many others that are there. And I wonder what their reaction is going to be to this.
No, that's fair. I think USA football, USA track and field, gymnastics, I think, for USA is all headquartered right here. Yeah, it's a primetime spot. I'm curious about it as well. My belief might be that if they can get a cut, if they can somehow get a portion of it, then they're all for it, right? That's what it seems to be, is everybody looks with their hand out saying, all right, if this is legal, how can I get my share?
Absolutely. All right, before we talk again, the playoffs that are currently being played in the NBA will be decided at least down to 4 teams. Who do you see battling for East Conference Championship? It's easy on the East side because Milwaukee obviously is going to be one of those teams.
Yeah, but I will say I've also been really impressed with Toronto and what they've been able to do. Milwaukee's also obviously been strong, and that's because they actually have a good coach in place in Mike Budenholzer over Jason Kidd, who kind of wrecked them a couple years ago, and it's just laughable that if the Lakers are even considering him for this head coaching role. But they obviously have Bud and Giannis, and then Toronto also impressed me. So I'd really like to see that in the Eastern Conference Finals. And then the West, like I've always continue to be tweeting here, is if anybody's selling their Golden State Warriors stock, please give me a call. I'll buy it all.
Yeah, that's a tough team to bet against. I mean, you can't forget who they still have on that roster.
They have the experience. They have the toughness. They've been there and done that. The only thing we saw this, I think it was in game 3 recently, is that their shots were just off. I mean, with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson combined to make 4 or 5 threes, and that's it, they're probably not going to win. Let's face it, these are two guys that often combine for double-digit threes and have the capability of hitting double-digit threes by themselves. So when you're living and dying by the three, for the most part, that's going to happen. But I really entrust that they'll figure it out. And honestly, selfishly, I hope the Rockets don't advance because I just don't find their brand of basketball entertaining at all. It is just a challenge for me to sit through Rockets games. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of James Harden, I got to tell you. A lot of people are, but I'm not. But, oh, well, to each to own, man, to each to own. Hey, you can follow him on Twitter, @Scott Agness. Great friend of the show. Scott, we appreciate you so much. Thanks a lot for joining us, man. We look forward to doing it again next week.
Happy to. Have a good week.
Hey, thanks for listening to the rebroadcast from today's edition of Indiana Sports Beat with Jim Coyle, the only daily show dedicated to Indiana University athletics. You can catch us live each weekday on IndianaSportsBeat.com, TheDailyHoosier.com, GruelingTruth.com, or go to Spreaker.com for live notifications. Yeah, that's Speaker with an R, SPREAKER.com. You can also catch the entire show any place you listen to a podcast, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, etc. You can find and follow the show on Facebook or follow me on Twitter @JimCoyleISB for complete coverage of the Indiana Hoosiers. Thanks again. I hope you have a great day. I'm Jim Coyle, and I will see you on the radio.